Right. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. And this is our last evening in this cycle. Yeah. Also, it's dark already, right? Yeah. Already, you an hour ahead. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, welcome to this last session on the nature of the mind, so to say, or in praise of the Vajra mind. And as we discussed many times before, it's important to generate correct motivation. Yeah. And if you understand the mind and its nature, you'll be able to eliminate afflictions, as we saw, and then try to generate a wish to do that for self as well as for others, you know, because we have a connection and others do not. So it's kind of responsibility we have to work for the benefit of others. Yeah. So try to generate correct motivation for yourself.
Pues bienvenidas y bienvenidos a todo el mundo. Hoy en nuestra última sesión, esta sesión donde vamos a hablar sobre la naturaleza de la mente, vamos a abordar este texto, la alabanza Vajra de la mente. Así que, como hemos mencionado en otras clases, vamos a desarrollar una buena motivación. Es importante desarrollar una buena motivación y podemos pensar que al comprender la mente y al comprender su naturaleza, esto nos va a permitir eliminar las aflicciones. Y esto lo vamos a hacer tanto para beneficio propio como para beneficio también de los demás, de otros seres, ya que tenemos una conexión con estas enseñanzas y con otros seres, pero los demás, hay personas, hay seres que no tienen una conexión con estas enseñanzas y por lo tanto, de alguna forma, es nuestra responsabilidad, por tanto, el trabajar por estos seres y ayudarlos. Así que vamos a desarrollar una buena motivación.
Yeah, so then take that motivation into account and in front of yourself, Sakyamuni Buddha, the masters of the 70 Pandits, the master of India, Tibet, all the way up to His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, as well as other Buddhist traditions. And then in front of that assembly, thinking about the suffering sentient beings surrounding yourself, then we lead them into the prayer, yeah, as an auspicious connection to work for their benefit, yeah, and then recite the prayers together.
Así que con esta motivación en mente vamos a visualizar que tenemos frente a nosotros a Buda Shakyamuni. Buda Shakyamuni está rodeado por los 17 panditas, por su santidad el Dalai Lama y por todos esos maestros y maestras de otros linajes, de otras tradiciones budistas. Frente a esta asamblea estamos cada uno de nosotros y a nuestro alrededor también están todos los seres sintientes, esos seres sintientes con quien además tenemos una conexión kármica especial y vamos a guiarlos en esta oración y a continuación vamos a leer las oraciones.
Yeah, so recite the prayers together. Yeah.
Así que vamos a unirnos para realizar estas oraciones.
Mute, mute.
Vamos a comenzar con la alabanza a Buda Shakyamuni. Fundador, dotado, destructor trascendental, que ha sido más allá, destructor de enemigos, completamente perfecto y despierto, perfecto en conocimiento y en buena conducta, sugata conocedor del mundo, guía supremo de los seres humanos que deben ser subyugados, maestro de dioses y humanos, ser completamente despierto, dotado, destructor trascendental, glorioso conquistador, subyugador del clan de los Aryas, ante ti me postro, te hago ofrecimientos y en ti busco refugio. Fundador, dotado, destructor trascendental, que has ido más allá, destructor de enemigos, completamente perfecto y despierto, perfecto en conocimientos y en buena conducta, sugata conocedor del mundo, guía supremo de los seres humanos que deben ser subyugados, maestro de dioses y humanos, ser completamente despierto, dotado, destructor trascendental, glorioso conquistador, subyugador del clan de los Aryas, ante ti me postro, te hago ofrecimientos y en ti busco refugio. Fundador, dotado, destructor trascendental, que ha sido más allá, destructor de enemigos, completamente perfecto y despierto, perfecto en conocimiento y en buena conducta, sugata conocedor del mundo, guía supremo de los seres humanos que deben ser subyugados, maestro de dioses y humanos, ser completamente despierto, dotado, destructor trascendental, glorioso conquistador, subyugador del clan de los Aryas, ante ti me postro, te hago ofrecimientos y en ti busco refugio. Cuando, oh Supremo, entre los humanos naciste en esta tierra, diste 7 pasos y después dijiste, soy Supremo en este mundo, ante ti que ya entonces eras sabio, me postro. Con cuerpos puros, forma supremamente pura, océano de sabiduría, como una montaña dorada, fama que resplandece en los 3 mundos, vencedor de los mejores, Señor, ante ti me postro. Con los signos supremos, un rostro como la luna inmaculada del color del oro, ante ti me postro. Eres impoluto mientras que los tres mundos no lo son, incomparablemente sabio, ante ti me postro. Salvador de gran compasión, fundador que atesoras todo el conocimiento, campo de mérito con cualidades como un vasto océano, ante ti que has sido a la totalidad me postro. Pureza que libera del apego, virtud que libera de los reinos inferiores, único camino sublime, realidad pura, ante el Dharma que apacigua me postro. Ante vosotros, liberados y conocedores del camino a la liberación, campo sagrado cualificado con logros, dedicados a los preceptos morales, comunidad sublime cuya meta es la virtud, me postro. Homenaje al Buda Supremo, homenaje al refugio del Dharma, homenaje a la gran Sangha, a los tres, homenaje siempre devota. A todos los dignos de respeto, inclinándome con tantos cuerpos como átomos, tienen todos los reinos en todos sus aspectos, con fe suprema rindo homenaje. No cometas ninguna acción negativa, realiza solo acciones virtuosas perfectas, subyuga tu mente completamente. Esta es la enseñanza de Buda. Como una estrella, una aberración visual, la llama de una lámpara, una ilusión, una gota de rocío, una burbuja, un sueño, un relámpago, una nube. Considera así todos los fenómenos condicionados. Que por estos méritos alcance el estado omnisciente, subyuga al enemigo, los defectos y libere a los seres del océano del samsara, donde están atormentados por las olas del envejecimiento, la enfermedad y la muerte. Sutra del corazón de la perfección de la sabiduría. Me postro ante la triple joya ARYA. Así hoy una vez, el Bhagavan estaba en la montaña llamada Pico del Buitre, en Raya Grija, acompañado de una gran asamblea de monjes y de bodhisattvas. En aquella ocasión, el Bhagavan estaba absorto en la concentración sobre las categorías de los fenómenos llamada percepción de lo profundo. Al mismo tiempo, también del área Avalokiteshvara, el Bodhisattva Mahasattva consideraba la práctica de la profunda perfección de la sabiduría y percibía los 5 agregados también vacíos de existencia inherente. Entonces, por el poder de Buda, el venerable Shariputra preguntó al área Avalokiteshvara, el Bodhisattva Mahasattva, ¿cómo debería adiestrarse un hijo de buen linaje que desea practicar la profunda perfección de la sabiduría? Así dijo, y el área Avalokiteshvara, el Bodhisattva Mahasattva, respondió el venerable Sharabhatiputra con estas palabras. Shariputra, cualquier hijo o hija de buen linaje que desee practicar la profunda perfección de la sabiduría deberá contemplarla así, considerando repetidamente y de modo correcto estos 5 agregados como también vacíos de naturaleza inherente. La forma es vacuidad, la vacuidad es forma. La vacuidad no es más que forma, la forma no es más que vacuidad. Del mismo modo, la sensación, la discriminación, los factores de composición y la conciencia son vacíos. Shariputra, asimismo, todos los fenómenos son vacíos, sin características, no son producidos ni destruidos, no son impuros ni libres de impureza, ni deficientes ni completos. Por eso, Shariputra, en la vacuidad no hay forma, ni sensación, ni discriminación, ni factores de composición, ni conciencia. No hay ojo, ni oído, ni nariz, ni lengua, ni cuerpo, ni mente. No hay forma visible, ni sonido, ni olor, ni sabor, ni objeto del tacto, ni fenómeno. No hay elemento del ojo y así hasta no ver el elemento de la mente, ni elemento de la conciencia mental. No hay ignorancia, ni extinción de la ignorancia, etcétera, hasta no haber envejecimiento, ni muerte, ni extinción del envejecimiento y de la muerte. Asimismo, no hay sufrimiento, ni origen, ni cesación, ni camino. No hay sabiduría suprema, ni logro, ni tampoco ausencia de logro. Así pues, Shariputra, como no hay logro, los bodhisattvas confían en la perfección de la sabiduría, la mente sin oscurecimiento ni miedo y moran en ella. Así trascienden los errores y alcanzan la meta del nirvana. También todos los budas de los 3 tiempos, de modo manifiesto y completo, despiertan a la insuperable, perfecta y completa iluminación basándose en la perfección de la sabiduría. Por eso el mantra de la perfección de la sabiduría, el mantra del gran conocimiento, el mantra insuperable, el mantra igual a lo inigualable, el mantra que pacifica por completo todo el sufrimiento debe ser reconocido como la verdad porque no es falso. Este es el mantra de la perfección de la sabiduría. Tayada Om Gate Gate para Samgate Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, así debe adiestrarse en la profunda perfección de la sabiduría el Bodhisattva Mahasattva. En ese momento el Bhagavan emergió de la concentración y alabó al área Avalokiteshvara, el Bodhisattva Mahasattva, con estas palabras. Bien dicho, hijo del linaje. Así es, así es. La profunda perfección de la sabiduría debe ser practicada tal como has indicado. Incluso los Tathagatas se alegran. Después de que el Bhagavan hubo dicho esto, el venerable Sharabhatiputra, el área Avalokiteshvara, el Bodhisattva Mahasattva y toda la asamblea junto con el mundo de los dioses humanos, asuras y gandharvas se llenaron de júbilo y alabaron las palabras del Bhagavan. Oración a la Dakini rostro de león. Me postro ante la asamblea de las Dakinis en los 3 chakras que permanecen en el sagrado yoga de usar el espacio. Por vuestros poderes de clarividencia y emanación mágica, Cuidad de los practicantes como una madre a su hija. Akasamara Sachadara Samaraya Petaka Samara 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 Sachadara Akasamara Sachadara Samaraya Petaka Samara Sachadara Samaraya Petaka Samara Sachadara Samaraya Petaka Akasamara Sachadara Samayara Pet Tayada Om Gate Gate para Samgate Bodhi Soha. Por las enseñanzas de las tres joyas supremas que poseen el poder de la verdad, que los obstáculos internos y externos se transformen, que se disipen, que se apacigüen, Shinden Kuruye Soha, que todas las fuerzas negativas opuestas al Dharma sean completamente apaciguadas, que la inmensidad de los 80.000 obstáculos sea apaciguada, que estemos libres de problemas, que disfrutemos de condiciones favorables para la práctica y que haya auspiciosidad y felicidad perfecta aquí y ahora mismo. El fundamento de todas las buenas cualidades. El fundamento de todas las buenas cualidades es el maestro bondadoso, perfecto y puro. La correcta devoción hacia él o ella es la raíz del camino. Al ver esto claramente y aplicar el gran esfuerzo, te ruego que me bendigas para confiar en él o ella con gran respeto. Al comprender que la preciosa libertad de este renacimiento solo se encuentra una vez, que es altamente significativa y difícil de encontrar de nuevo, te ruego que me bendigas para que genere la mente que, sin cesar día y noche, toma su esencia. Esta vida es tan transitoria como una burbuja de agua, recordando cuán rápidamente decae y llega la muerte, y que después de la muerte, como la sombra sigue al cuerpo, siguen los resultados del karma blanco y negro. Al hallar una convicción firme y definitiva en esto, te ruego que me bendigas para que siempre ponga cuidado en abandonar incluso la más pequeña de las negatividades y llevar a cabo todas las acciones virtuosas. Buscar placeres samsáricos es la puerta a todo sufrimiento, son inciertos y no se pueden confiar en ellos. Al reconocer estos defectos, te ruego que me bendigas para que genere la fuerte aspiración por el gozo de la liberación. Guiada por este pensamiento puro, surge la atención, la alerta y una gran cautela. La raíz de las enseñanzas es mantener los votos de la liberación individual. Te ruego que me bendigas para que lleve a cabo esta práctica esencial. Tal como yo he caído en el océano de Samsara, así han caído todos los seres errantes, mis madres. Te ruego que me bendigas para que vea esto, para que me adiestre la suprema bodhicitta y para que asuma la responsabilidad de liberar a todos los seres errantes. Si solo desarrollo la bodhicitta, pero no practico los tres tipos de moralidad, no alcanzaré la iluminación. Al reconocer todo esto con claridad, te ruego que me bendigas para que practique los votos del bodhisattva con gran energía. Una vez haya apaciguado las distracciones hacia los objetos erróneos y haya analizado correctamente el significado de la realidad, te ruego que me bendigas para que generes en mi mente sin demora el camino unificado de la calma mental y la visión superior. Habiéndome convertido en un recipiente puro, al adiestrarme en el camino general, te ruego que me bendigas para que entre por la puerta sagrada de las afortunadas, el supremo vehículo Vajra. En ese momento, la base para conseguir los dos logros es mantener puros los votos y el samaya. Al convencerme firmemente de esto, te ruego que me bendigas para que proteja estos votos y compromisos como a mi vida. Así pues, al haber comprendido la importancia de los dos estadios, la esencia del Vajrayana y practicar con gran energía, sin abandonar el yoga supremo de las 4 sesiones, te ruego que me bendigas para que practique correctamente las palabras del Sagrado Maestro. Asimismo, que los maestros que muestran el noble camino y los amigos espirituales que lo practican gocen de una larga vida. Te ruego que me bendigas para que apacigue por completo todos los obstáculos externos e internos, que en todas mis vidas, sin separarme nunca de maestras perfectas, disfrute del magnífico Dharma, que por completar las cualidades de los estadios y caminos alcance rápidamente el estado de Vajradhara. Ofrecimiento de mandala corto. Esta base ungida con perfume, cubierta de flores, adornada con el monte Meru, los 4 continentes, el sol y la luna, la imagino como un campo de Buda y la ofrezco, que todos los seres disfruten de esta tierra pura. Oh Lama, puro, sagrado y perfecto, desde las nubes de compasión que se forman en los cielos de tu sabiduría del Dharmakaya, te ruego que derrames una lluvia de Dharma vasto y profundo, exactamente de acuerdo con las necesidades de las que deben ser adiestradas. Ye Dhamma Guru Rana Mandala Kam Niryadayami.
Sangye Jodon Zoni Zonam La Janjo Bado Dani Yazu Ji Dagi Jizo Gibe Zonangi Dola Penshe Sangye Doba Sangye Jidon Zoni Zona. Janjo Bado Dani Yazo Je Dagi Jesu Gibe Zona. Lola Penje Sangye Roba Jo Sangye Jidon Zoni Zona. Janjo Bado Dani Yazo Je Dagi Jesu Gibe Zona. Lola Penje Sangye Roba Jo. Kangi tu sun dizu be tawa tanji pa mochi tamshi dizu tanji ba. Gotan de la chatse lo. Yeah. So today start with one quotation of the seventh Dalai Lama about the nature of the mind. There's a kind of a text calling the four types of mindfulness. Yeah. So the great seventh Dalai Lama also has a text about different types of mindfulness, mindfulness of the guru, mindfulness of the deity, you know, and then mindfulness of emptiness and illusory appearances. Yeah, so there's kind of different types of mindfulness according to the great seventh Dalai Lama. And there's one verse, the last verse of that particular text, where it says, at the crossroads of the 6 collections of consciousness that have diverse perceptions. So that means, you know, we have 6 types of consciousness, right? We have 5 sensory perceptions and 1 mental. And, you know, on the crossroads of these, or, you know, among these types of consciousness, there are diverse perceptions, right? We have misunderstandings of reality. And also, we know if you haven't realized emptiness yet, then for an ordinary being, right, according to the consequent school, that all minds that does not realize emptiness actually is mistaken, because things appear to us in a different way than reality is, you know. So things appear very inherent from their own side, while they actually don't exist in that way. Yeah. So that's the first line. Then the second line, they are seen as hazy dualistic phenomena, which are baseless. You know, that talks about the mind and the object appears as 2 different things, right? A dualistic appearance, object and the mind perceiving the object appears a very dualistic way, in a very kind of separate way. That's how things appear to our mind. Yeah. And then it says in the third line, there is a magical show that is by nature deceptive. Yeah, so magical show. I don't know in Spain what kind of magical shows you have, but you know, is a kind of a show that is not a reality. Yeah, on TV, people show you different things that, you know, the famous story of cutting a woman, mostly a woman, into 2 with a saw, right? Yeah. So this kind of the first time you see that, you think, oh, but then you know the trick. That's actually 2 people there. One you see the legs, and the other person you see the head and the arms sticking out. So as you know the trick, you don't you know, you don't have the feeling anymore, because you understand, right? You see it as a kind of illusion. You know it's not reality. Yeah. So that's what it says here. That a magical show by nature is deceptive. So in a similar way, also in Spain, when you travel on the road and it's a bit of, in summer, you see this kind of mirage on top of the road, right? So we know it's a mirage, but people who see it for the first time, it looks like water. Yeah, it looks like there's water on top of the road. But the closer you get, you actually see it's just a mirage, you know? So same with the self of the person, the I appears very solid and real, you know, as we discussed before. But the more you look for it, the more actually you can find out it's not really there. It's just a show, right? It's kind of an illusion. That's what it is. This I that is there since beginner's lifetime, this inherent I is kind of, since beginner's lifetime is an illusion, but we never ever seen it as an illusion. So the more you understand emptiness, the absence of inherent existence, then you actually can come to the conclusion this I that appears is not really there. You know, so you can check, can you find it in your body? Can you find it in your mind? Yeah, and especially we talk about the mind now, often we think, oh, it's not in the body, it's not out of the body, but maybe it's the mind. But even the mind, as we just talked about, the 6 collections of consciousness, and each of those 6, if you remember well, last year, a few of you were there when we went over the 51 mental factors, right? So there's main minds and mental factors. So in that process of main minds and mental factors, we cannot find a self or an I, you know, in that whole process. So you can see that, you know, also consciousness is empty of an inherent I. And consciousness itself also cannot be found. If you look, you know, in your stream of consciousness, as we explained last time, with this continuity of this river somewhere in I think, northern part of Spain is maybe more hope for. I mean, also southern part of Spain also have mountains, but the idea I have of South Spain is very dry, you know. But I believe in winter there's in Uzerling also is snow, and then that melts, right? So it's very similar as we discussed last time, you know. So our mind is very similar. It's kind of, you know, there's just this continuous flux of moments, right? And the mind doesn't really abide. It's just one moment after the other. Yeah. So a river also doesn't stand still, right? The river, you know, always moves, you know, to a certain extent. Yeah, so our mind also always moves, you know. So in that movement of different moments of consciousness, we cannot pinpoint down a particular aspect and say, oh, this is consciousness. This is it. We can find it. Because the moment you point it out, that moment is gone, right? That's kind of just a second, it's gone. Yeah, so consciousness is a bit like a magical show. If you look for consciousness, you cannot find it. Yeah. So that's this line where it says, the third line, it's a magical show that is by nature deceptive. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah. So don't believe it to be true. Don't believe that. Yeah. You have to believe certain things in life, but, you know, when it comes to ultimate nature of reality, then how things appear to the mind, you don't have to always believe that, you know, that don't believe it to be true, but view it as the nature of emptiness. Yeah. So last time, also last week, we talked about the destructive emotions, right? These afflictions also makes us believe they correct. Yeah, so they're actually lying to us all the time, you know. Destructive emotions, they make us believe they are right. And often we make friends with destructive emotions and we think they're right. And then we believe them and then we follow them and then actually there's a problem. So saying a person who lies to you all the time, if you believe that person, then you end up into trouble, right? If you don't believe that person, and that person knows you're not believing that person anymore, then that person will give up lying to you because there's no point, right? So with our destructive emotions, similar way. So if you see that these destructive emotions like anger and attachment and jealousy and pride, they just want to deceive us. If you see it's just not a reality, they just try to let us believe, then they lose their potential, you know? Yeah, so that's why we often say, look the emotion straight into the eye, you know, look straight. And then you have this kind of course, first you train in an awareness, and you train in taking distance from the object. And then, because the distance is there, you can be able to just observe, as we discussed last week, you know? Yeah. And then the more you observe, the less those emotions can actually, you know, help you to get influenced by them. Yeah. So same with ignorance. If you understand that is I, the way it appears, is just an illusion, right? It's not everything not everything is an illusion, you know? your dinner you make this evening, or paella, whatever, is not an illusion, right? It's kind of, you can taste it, you know. That's not an illusion. The feeling we have is not an illusion. The body we have is not an illusion, right? But to see the paella as inherent, to see your feeling as inherent, to see your body as inherent, that's an illusion. You see that? That's very important to understand. Many people sometimes get some misunderstandings of this point. So what is an illusion and what is reality? So that things exist from their own side and appear in that way, that's an illusion, because nothing exists from its own side. Yeah. So don't believe it be true, it says, but view it as having the nature of emptiness. You know, there's with many problems in life, it's like that. You know, sometimes we get so entangled in problems of life, emotions takes over and the clarity goes, you know. Yeah. So if you see accomplished masters who are in complete control over many aspects of life, they don't worry about these points anymore. Once in Tushita Dharmasala in India, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, we had a puja, I think. Yeah, first teaching and then puja. And then there was one person who actually passed away, one student of Rinpoche. But Rinpoche knew already, and Rinpoche had sent this consciousness already to the Pure Land, something like that. So Rinpoche didn't worry about it anymore, right? Yeah. So Rinpoche was kind of, yeah, fine, no problem, don't worry about it. But then this person came inside in the middle of the puja halfway through and said, oh, Rinpoche, this person passed away and this, that, and on a motorcycle going to Goa. And then Rinpoche already knew this person is completely okay because I took care of this person. So then Rinpoche was just making a joke of getting too uptight about things, you know. So then Rinpoche said, oh, so he was on the motorcycle to Goa, then he died. So he didn't make it to Goa, right? He said. It's very interesting. So, you know, because Rinpoche was already in control, that person is fine. You don't have to worry about it anymore. So that's why Rinpoche made a statement. It's very interesting, you know. So we often get entangled in emotions, yeah, very strongly. But if you see people who are in complete control, they know, okay, being taken care of, don't worry about it anymore, that's it, you know. It's a very interesting approach. Yeah. So yeah, we believe in these afflictions, but actually causes us to suffer more. Yeah. So that's why it's important to understand that these aspects of the mind, which are just temporarily and not a reality, you know, that helps us already to not get influenced by destructive emotions too much. Yeah. Yeah. There's many stories like that actually. Yeah, that's very interesting. You know, if you once I was also sitting, went to see Gan Tirmshe, and there was somebody else there, and then I was sitting with one of the person who live in the same house group. He's in his, I think, mid-90s at that time, very good health, and then he said, "Oh, they didn't give me a ticket yet, so I'm still here." That's the way they talk about death and impermanence. Why we often, you know, get really uptight about things. And that in impermanence is also something, there's an aspect of reality, right? If you don't like to believe that, and that's what, like our grasping to permanence, right? We like to believe that, and then we don't think about that in impermanence. And that causes the problem when we die or when we lose somebody else, you know? But if you understand that in impermanence, which is a reality, and you don't understand this grasping at permanence, and you see the grasping at permanence is actually deceiving us, then there's much more freedom, you know. Yeah. So also in one book by Carlo Rovelli on time, because I was titled The Order of Time. That's one book, probably also in Spanish. Towards the end in the book, he talks about fear for death, he says, is a mistake of evolution. It's a very interesting statement, you know. So he said, fear for death. Why should you fear death? Because it's a reality. And why should you fear reality? It's a very interesting statement of a scientist. So for us, same thing. Why should we fear these aspects, you know. So that's what talks about here, to don't believe these destructive emotions that makes us believe in permanence. Yeah, that's we grasp to permanence all the time. Even when we're going to die in 2 weeks' time, we still think we're gonna survive. You know, that's grasping to permanence causes a problem, you know. So yeah, we see that many people were sick, and it's still, it was good to have hope, but you have to be realistic, right? So to be more aware of these points and don't believe this grasping to permanence can be a big relief. Yeah. So also not grasping at the destructive emotions also can be a big relief, you know. Yeah. So then there's more freedom. The more you understand the nature of the mind, the more freedom is being built. Yeah. So that's why you see, if you see meditators, you know, meditate on these points, then the mind is complete, kind of peaceful, you know, because they understand the nature of the mind. They don't have many possessions. They live very simply, you know, but there's not much disturbance of the mind, so to say. Yeah, so it's kind of very interesting to see that. And then when obstacles come. When they have to die, then they die. It's kind of a very easy way of living your life. Yeah, so that means easy way of living your life mentally, right? It doesn't mean we all have to go and live in Österling and make a cave if you don't have a hut or something like that. You know, of course, if you can live like Milarepa, best, but we have to be realistic, you know, and also Österling probably cannot deal with all the people who are present this evening to support them in Österling 24/7. But, you know, the main thing in our daily life is to see these aspects of the mind and see what's reality and what's not. You know, so that's why we try to think in those ways. Yeah. So don't believe it to be true, meaning these kind of destructive emotions and this grasping at very solid aspects of reality. Yeah. But view it as having the nature of emptiness. You know, same as the destructive emotions, when they come up, you know, then also we look them in the eyes and see that they actually in the nature of impermanence. They are in the nature of inherent, empty of inherent existence. The more you contemplate those things, the more these destructive emotions lose their potential. Yeah. First, there's acceptance, then there's taking distance, right? There's two very important steps when we face problems. Accepting, because life is not perfect, so we accept that there is a problem. Because of acceptance, that helps us to not get entangled, to take a distance, right? So without accepting, that step is not there. So first we have to accept the problem we have, then we take distance. If you take distance, you're not entangled in this problem, so you can think clearly about it, and much more capacity of the mind to be in control by being the observer, looking at it. Yeah, so that's true for the destructive emotions as well. When they come up, strong anger that comes up, or desire or whatsoever, you can do two things. You can just blow up and lose it, or you can decide to look at it from a distance and have fun. Yeah, because in one way it's quite fun. If you see, it's just a play of the mind. When a destructive emotion comes up, if you can take a distance, it's just a play of the mind. You know, if you see it's just a play of the mind, you're just observing it, and you don't get involved. Yeah, so that can be very helpful. Yeah, so that's what it says here. In the next line, it says, "Don't let your mind go astray." Yeah, so don't let your mind be overpowered by these destructive emotions, but places in the nature of appearance emptiness. So that's very advanced. But if you do in the morning a little bit of, you know, concentration meditation, right, upon the breath, you get your mind a bit calm, and you get a little experience of this calmness of the mind, you know, and then because of the calm, Jason, you can hear me or not? Anna, is some problem? Yeah, it's okay again? Yeah, you missed anything or not? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So if you do like a daily meditation in the morning, for example, you do counting the breaths or something like that, and then you get a little bit of more peace of the mind, right? When the mind gets peaceful, so you get a little bit experience of that. That mind is much more subtle than a mind when a destructive emotion comes up. Yeah. So then throughout the day, if you, for example, every hour or so, you try to take a few breaths and have this, and think about or try to reflect about this nature of the mind without thinking about past and future, just for a few seconds. If you do that every hour or so, you keep your mind in a very kind of more subtle aspect on those occasions. And then afflictions will not really have the power to come up that as before. So in the morning when you do your meditations and you do counting of the breath and the mind settles down, a bit peace of mind, then you try to repeat that throughout the day every hour or so. You don't have to sit down for a few minutes or something formally. And people in your working place in the office, they probably think you cuckoo if you have all of a sudden sit somewhere and then every hour and then start breathing, and then people think you lost it. Yeah. So you can do that unnoticed, right? Or in public transport, you can just sit and, you're breathing anyway. So there's nothing special. But then the way you breathe and the way you observe, that's inside, right? People don't have to know. So if you do that every hour or so, then you touch down or touch base upon this more subtler or more clear aspect of the mind. So if you do that on a regular basis, then destructive emotions will be less involved, because they need very core states of mind. Yeah, so we know when the mind gets a bit negative, we think about negative things in life, then it's very easy for those destructive emotions to grow, because the mind gets coarser and we think about past and future more, and we're not in the present, and that causes all these emotions to grow, right? So that's why throughout the day we try to have touched down on this peaceful aspect of the mind, and then that will help to reduce strong emotions. Yeah. So that's what it says here. Don't let your mind go astray, but place it in the nature of appearance and emptiness. Yeah, if you can really do that over time, then the more afflictions you get, that doesn't harm you anymore, because you look in the eyes of the afflictions and you see it's in the nature of emptiness, and they're not reality out there, and then they disappear. So same with ignorance, right? The more you understand emptiness of inherent existence, the more ignorance will lose their potential. Yeah, the same thing. So through not losing mindfulness, hold it in the nature of appearance emptiness. Yeah, so we haven't realized emptiness yet, but we can reflect to a certain extent. Things are not that solid out there. The table, the screen, the computer, your body, your mind. It looks very solid out there, but if you analyze, you can see it's just cause and effect relationships. It's not that solid as it looks like. And your mind even more coming and going. So that's kind of things to contemplate upon in order to try to get rid of this grasping at solid aspects of reality. Solid aspects of the mind and what appears to the mind. Yeah, so this, because we can prevent so many problems if we want to, by training the mind, right? So you can escape a problem, but then if you escape the problem, for example, you think, oh, it's enough, I go to Özeling and I'm going to escape all my problems. So you go to Özeling, and then you're there, and then your mind is still with you, right? so that doesn't mean problems will not come. As many people will go to Özeling, and then the mind is with them, and then the mind creates a problem. Or the people down in the valley, they play all night long the drums. Yeah. So that also can disturb your peace, right? So that means if you don't train your mind, wherever you go, it's not really solving the problem. You cannot escape problems. The problems will always come, even if they put you on the most beautiful beach somewhere in Spain with the most beautiful food and the most beautiful trees. There's not many trees in South Spain, but you can imagine beautiful trees. Then you lay down there and you have some food, and just like that. You just order, and just like that, and people bring whatever you like. You know the feeling. So you can think, oh, that would be quite amazing, but you get bored after some time. It's not really, so that means wherever you are, your mind is with you, so problems will arise. So we have to analyze the mind. Yeah, that's why we here. Yeah. So to understand it more, that's why we do this text, in order to get a little bit more idea of what is the reality, and what appears and what's reality and what's ultimate nature of the mind. I think we only did verse 1 last time, right? Is that true? Yeah. How many verses did we do? 0. Oh, I just did introduction last time, is it? Allez. Yeah. Allez. Yeah. Okay. Then it praises the Vajra mind. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So first, in the praise of the Vajra means indestructible, right? So Vajra is indestructible. So indestructible in the sense of the ultimate nature of the mind is without afflictions, right? The ultimate nature of the mind is emptiness, yeah, empty of inner existence. Then on a conventional level, so that's ultimate, right? Ultimate aspect of the mind is empty of inner existence, but is free of stains, or free of any afflictions, right? Then the conventional level of the mind, the subtle conventional level of the mind, the most subtle mind, so to say, is also free of stains. So it talks about two aspects: a very subtle conventional state of mind, and the ultimate nature of that particular subtle mind, with its emptiness. Yeah, so we talk about two things: a conventional aspect and an ultimate aspect. Yeah. So that's Vajra mind, the meaning of the title of the text. Yeah, so that's been praised. Many texts, they praise various aspects of the Buddhist teachings, But in Mahamudra, Dzogchen, and the Vajrayana, often the nature of the mind is being an object of homage, because the nature of the mind is helping us, to eliminate all suffering. Why? Because the stains are not a part of this innate nature of the mind. So as long as you abide in this innate nature of the mind, afflictions don't have the possibility to influence you. Yeah, so that's you can see some people just in whatever problem arises because they connected with this mind. So it's kind of, if you deep down, you go to the beach, right? You see these beautiful waves coming and going, but deep down below, the water is not moved, right? If you go deeper in the ocean. Yeah, so the movement is only on the surface, but not down below. So deep down below is this kind of more subtle mind that is not influenced by afflictions. In a similar way, the blue sky is not influenced of the clouds. The clouds are not a part of the blue sky; they're just obscuring the blue sky, right? Yeah. So the Vajra mind is very similar in that way. Yeah. So that's the title. Then it says homage to the youthful Manjushri. Yeah. So praying to Arya Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom. And yeah, that also has many explanations, but just to summarize it, in Tibetan we say Jampel, right? Jampel Yang, we say in Tibetan. Manjushri we say Jampel Yang. Yeah, so in the commentaries on this text, Jam and Pel and the youthful, there's different interpretations, right? So what does that mean? To summarize it, it comes down Jampel Shunugyubala Sachalo, that's a Tibetan, the youthful Manjushri. So what does that mean? Youthful Manjushri. Youthful means free of faults, even the smallest one. Yeah. So same young children, they're not really influenced by conceptualizations, right? I mean, not as much as adults. you know. So children, they're much more playful and spontaneous, you know. Yeah, so that's kind of, it's not exactly the same, but yeah, you can, yeah, children are kind of, oh, can I drink the blue sky, or can I breathe in the blue sky, or something? They ask questions like that, you know. They're very kind of not influenced by conceptualities, you know. So the mind, when you recognize the nature of the mind, the subtle aspect even, you know, then the more you touch down upon that, you know, the less conceptualizations will influence you, because you see conceptualizations of the past and the future is just a fabrication. It's not a reality as such. It's just mental states that creates this kind of mental images, right? As we talked before, and that's not really something real, so to say. So that means if you have this youthful, you can see, yeah. If you get older, sometimes people get older, and then they say, "Oh, my mind feels still like 25." Well, they're 80 or something like that, right? So yeah, so many great masters in the 80s, and their mind was very flexible. It's like a young child sometimes even. It's very interesting. When I went to with a few of my teachers sometimes in the early days, I had to take them to hospital and, you know, or check up, and they in the 80s, you know, and then they just have to wait. So they wait, you know, like it's kind of no really kind of disturbance, like a young mind, so to say. So that's kind of, yeah, without any faults. Yeah. So that's youthful. Manjushri talks about an all-knowing mind, right? That actually realize emptiness and appearance at the same time. Yeah. So eventually, when you become a Buddha, then everything appears to you directly. You know, everything appears directly, conventional and ultimate reality. Yeah, so the Manjushri aspect referring to that, and then as well as Jawa Bemelundup means activities without effort, spontaneous. You know, that's something we like to acquire, right? We like to do things without effort. Normally, we have to put a lot of effort in the things we're doing all the time. So if you become a Buddha, everything's spontaneous, you know, and that's why sometimes things change like that, you know. So if you see His Holiness or Lama Zopa Rinpoche especially, very spontaneous. Everything is yeah, unpredictable sometimes. Yeah. Once also His Holiness Dalai Lama came to Serra Monastery in the morning, and the teaching is supposed to be starting next day. And so His Holiness arrives in the morning, have the rest afternoon, a few meetings, and then the teaching start next day. And it's kind of not a few hundred, but you know, a few thousand. I mean, we had, I think, 20, 30,000 people in Serra at that time. And then His Holiness arrives, and then they do the, you know, official thing, and then His Holiness says, "Oh, what's on the afternoon? Allez, a few meetings only. Okay, you might as well start with the teachings." So then within a few hours, you have to inform 20,000, 30,000 people that it's going to start in a few hours' time. And not only in a few hours' time, also tea and everything has to be organized. It's very interesting. Yeah. Also, Lama Zopa Rinpoche is like that. Once we did a consecration of the stupa in my house. We have a house for Western monks, you know. We thought maybe build something makes it easier for conditions, right? So then you build a house, and it was in the middle. It was open, so I knew already when Rinpoche sees this, he wants to have a stupa there, right? So that's also Rinpoche, okay, stupa, and then we built quite a big stupa, and then invite Rinpoche for consecration and all the lamas, you know, many high lamas to invite, and then everything organized, and Rinpoche cancels, right? So canceled, and then okay, no problem. Then I think a week later, then Rinpoche calls to remember Roger, and then Roger gives the phone to Rinpoche. And then Rinpoche said, "Oh, Namdak, we still have to do consecration, right?" I said, "Yes, Rinpoche, if Rinpoche has time." And then Rinpoche said, "Oh, what about today?" I said, "Okay, Rinpoche, what time?" And then Rinpoche said, "Oh, I tell you later, you know." So I was always kind of okay. And then Rinpoche said, "Okay, what's the time now?" I said, "It's about 12 o'clock." And Rinpoche said, oh, what about 133, 132? I said, it doesn't give me much time to organize all the lamas, but I can give it a try. And Rinpoche said, yeah, you just try it. So then luckily, because Rinpoche is spontaneous energy, then, I mean, I had just invite the lamas by phone. I just have to call the attendants and say, sorry. And they understood because, you know, they know Rinpoche is busy and spontaneous. So, and I organized dinner and cars back and forth, and just everything went just almost kind of very smooth, very interesting. So within 1.5 hours, we had set up the altar, we have invited the lamas, organized dinner, everything. Yeah, and then Rinpoche came, consecration, and all the lamas were fighting over who's going to sit where, because they always sit, they want to be humble, right? So and then eventually it was organized, and then they started with the, you know, actual consecration, and Rinpoche was sitting on the side, and Rinpoche was doing something completely different. It's very interesting kind of to see, you know, and yeah, we see that often. Rinpoche invite for teaching and it doesn't happen, right? And then it takes a few days with initiations before it happens, and then middle of the night or something. Yeah. So that's kind of this spontaneous activity, seeing what's most beneficial, you know, at a particular time. Yeah, it's very interesting. So that's an aspect of the mind of Manjushri. Yeah. Okay, so then we go to the text. So then it says in the first verse, which is actually a summary of the whole text, you know, it says whatever. There we got another translation, but yeah, the Spanish is yeah, okay. So there's different kind of, you know, conceptualities in the first line. It talks about that. Yeah, so whatever mental fabrications arise from the mind, you know, that by itself is cleared away by the mind nature itself. Yeah, so whatever is created by the mind, like for example, if you, especially in the Dzogchen Mudra, that's we're not going to talk in great details about that, but if you think about subtle aspects of the mind, right, we are beyond stains. The afflictions are not a part of it. The more you be in that state, then afflictions cannot influence you, right? So that means the clear light nature of the mind itself prevents those emotions from taking over. And not only prevent those emotions from taking over, also it clears them away, because if you see those emotions are just a play of consciousness, then they lose their power and their potential, and they just disappear, right? So that's what it says, are cleared away by the mind's nature. And then if you combine that with understanding emptiness, then even becomes more sophisticated. Yeah, that those conceptualities or mental fabrications. I don't know how it's translated in Spanish, but that those things actually that creates us disturbance that is cleared away by the nature of the mind itself. Yeah. So that's what it says. The nature of the mind clears away afflictions in the third line. Yeah. So I pay homage to this aspect. That's what it says. I pay homage to this nature of the mind. Yeah. So that's very interesting. Normally we pay homage to the Buddha or to the teachings, or, you know, but here we pay homage to our own mind, and not our mind of anger or our mind of desire, but our ultimate nature of the mind. You see, because if you take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, then you know that a more superior form of taking refuge is taking resultant refuge, right? I take refuge in my own Buddhahood. I take refuge in my own realization of emptiness. I take refuge in my own becoming a Sangha member. You know, so that's a very good, sophisticated form of taking refuge, right? Because if you yourself get a realization of emptiness, that's the real safe direction, right? That's really helping us to eliminate suffering. You know, so that's here, same thing. If you take refuge in this nature of the mind, then afflictions will disappear over time. So that's the real refuge. We don't have to look for refuge outside. You know, we have the refuge actually within. And the qualities of our mind we have within us. You know, so that's what it talks about here. Yeah, yeah. That's verse number 1. Yeah. Then verse number 2 it talks about, you know, we have all kind of different interests. You know, that's why we have so many religions and so many forms of faith and so many forms of life. Yeah, for one person, Christianity is good. For another person, you know, yeah, whatever world religion you use is good, right? And for another person, Buddhism is good. And for one person, more Nyingma, other person more Kagyu, other person more Sakya, other person more Gelug, right? So we have different kind of interests and inclinations based on previous kind of imprints, right? Yeah. So, and it's same for deities. Yeah, some people feel connected with Aryatara, and some people feel connected with Avalokitesvara or with Manjushri, or you know. So that means we have different kind of connections, and it also depends on the mind and the imprints in the mind. You know, yeah, that's what it says. So that's why people also in deity practice, why some people practice one and some people check with a teacher which deity to practice, and then the teacher can say, you know, or this or that, and then and they ask for preliminary practices, and then Rinpoche gives you huge kind of lists. Sometimes a few of my friends, they have very long lists. I also have a few lists, but yeah, I got the list in 1993. Also still not finished, but yeah, Rinpoche said it's for life, you know. So preliminary practice are for life. Yeah, I know. See a few people laughing, so I know maybe you also got a list. Yeah. But that's okay, you know. It's, yeah, yeah. So I know how you feel. Okay, yeah. So that's yeah, that's no issue because it's for life, right? And even if you die halfway through, you know, then it's a good connection. If you keep a positive attitude and you say, "Oh, I'm gonna try to finish one day," and I try to do my best. So if you die halfway through, you have a connection to progress in the future, right? Yeah. So that's no issue. Yeah. So that means, yeah, whatever deity or practice we do depends on previous imprints and inclinations. Yeah. Then it says in the third line, it says deities arise from the Jew-like mind. You know, so when you do practice, you know, most of us is like we recite the mantra Om Sarvava Suddha Sarvadhamma Sarvava Shuddho Ham Tombai Nida Gyur, everything dissolve into emptiness. So if you then think, oh, this inherent body is here and that becomes a deity, then you're missing out, right? The deity arises from within emptiness. So Tantra, the Vajrayana, without understanding emptiness, it's nice, put some imprints in the mind, but it doesn't produce the results, right? So you have to understand emptiness. That's what it says, the Jew-like mind that liberates. Yeah, so deities arise from the Jew-like mind. Yeah, and there's no other way, you know. So this kind of the Jew-like mind is the only way to generate a deity, you know, in understanding emptiness. Yeah, so you can see understanding emptiness is quite essential, and then if you combine it with the subtle form of mind, as they do in the High Yoga Tantra, for example, then it becomes a very sophisticated part, because the conventional reality and ultimate reality you try to correlate to at the same time, and then the deity arises from that nature. Yeah, conventional ultimate nature. Yeah, so that's verse number 2. Then it says in verse number 3, it says, what is achieved by the mind? Yeah, so, you know, so enlightenment is basically achieved by the mind. Yeah, so enlightenment comes from the mind. Yeah. In a similar way, the 5 or 6 transmigrations, right? We're born again in samsara. So you're born in Spain, I'm born in the Netherlands, I'm sitting now here in London, and we have a conversation, right? So that means we are born in different places by the power of the mind, you know, by the power of continuity of the mind and karmic relationships, etc. Yeah, so that's also by the mind. Yeah, and so the nature of happiness and suffering is also created by the mind. Yeah, so every form of happiness and suffering also comes from the mind. Yeah, so you can see it's quite important to understand the mind's nature. Yeah, because problems and happiness all arise from the mind. Yes, true, right? Sometimes you wake up and you have a nice dream, you want to go back to sleep because it's so nice to be happy, right? And sometimes during the day, then you lose a peace of mind and you become unhappy and you don't like that. Yeah, so that means it's very interesting sometimes to see that, of course, the dream, we know, okay, happiness. But then over the day, to track back the thoughts, which thought actually triggered this aspect of becoming unhappy? It's very interesting sometimes to analyze that, because then you try to see it's just a play of the mind, right? It's just coming and going. Yeah. So all natures of happiness and suffering, everything, happiness and suffering also comes from the mind itself. It's produced by the mind itself, right? Yeah. So it's not from outside. We know that, right? Happiness comes from within, And then people, they like to have so much money, and then they like to go into space for 10 minutes, and then pay a lot of money, and then they come out and they show aspect of, yeah, I'm happy now. Yeah, but actually, deep down, if they're really happy or not is a question. Yeah, they come back out excited because it's excitement. But if it's real happiness or not, or football, Madrid also, I think, yeah. So maybe you know more about, you probably, you know more about Spanish football than I do. But same thing when you see the coach, in the early days, I don't know if they still do that, but one cigarette after the other, when it gets a bit tight, and then they kind of, and they win, and they almost a heart attack because they win, and when they lose, they almost a heart attack because they're losing, right? Is that real happiness or not? Even if they win, it's kind of, you can check. It's very, very interesting. You just observe the faces of the person who's winning, and you just see what the reaction is. It's very interesting. Yeah. So yeah, if there's real happiness from outside or from inside, so you can check. Yeah. So yeah, it means it really comes from the mind itself, right? It's if you see people living in retreat and peaceful mind, and then there's no, so content, a very content feeling, and you can see that in sometimes you can see in the face. I met a few of my friends who were in retreat for some time, and sometimes you photograph of a meditator. Very interesting. There's a very nice photograph of Lobsang Tenzin, one of the meditators in Dharamshala in the 80s. His Holiness sent to the US for research because he had, tumor, inner fire realizations and those things. So we sent him for research to the US. If you see, there's one picture we have in my house in Serra. It's very nice. Very, like little smile, beaming, very content expression. And when he did all this research with the scientists, who were very impressed because he had calm abiding, right? So he could sit for 4 hours without a second distraction, and so and then he could move the energies in his body because of this tumor, So they're very impressed. But then he said, they can measure all kind of things, but they don't have a clue about the bliss of the mind. He said. It's a very interesting comment, So that means that the happiness comes from within, right? Yeah, the nature of the mind. So it's all there. You see, we don't have to look outside or do shopping or try to find happiness and go to the shops in town and or buy this or buy that, and then try to look for happiness, because it's there. It is all inside. Yeah, so it's very interesting. It comes from the mind. Yeah. In verse number 3. Then in verse number 4, it talks about that, everything, perceiving different beings or different objects, and perceiving or doing our Lamrim meditations, right? It's all created by the mind. So analytical meditation, placement meditation is all created by the mind. Yeah, so the matrix of the mind, as it says. And yeah, all pure appearances and impure appearances is also created by the mind. There's very interesting stories about that. You know, second Doji Chang, well, for example, second Doji Chang was a great master. Still, his present incarnation also very low key. In previous lifetimes, also very low key. You know, there's a great master that he had this kind of, you know, pure appearances all the time. You know, and he was always checking people out because he knew for himself he was completely realized, so he could show this aspect, you know. So second Doji Chang, once there were a few students who came to see him in about Nat in Kathmandu, and then they met him on the street. They didn't know that because he was dressed up like an old, you know, old clothes and you know. So they asked this monk. He said, "Oh, do you know where second Doji Chang is staying?" And he said, "Woo, woo." And then he said, "Second Doji Chang." I said, "Who? Huh?" And he said, "We're looking for second Doji Chang. Do you know where he's staying?" "Oh, huh, you can try there, maybe. Check it out." So then they went, and then through his miracle power, he was already sitting there. So the people came inside, and he was sitting there. So he would challenge people a lot, and he, yeah. Anyway, there's more stories, but maybe this goes too far to to pure appearances. He could do all kind of things. Very interesting. Yeah, taking dirt and then transform it, and then yeah, that was very interesting. Yeah. Anyway, so that means that it all comes from the nature of the mind, right? Pure or impure appearances, relation with you know, with the teachers, etc. Yeah, comes from the mind. Yeah. Yeah. And then even all the way up to enlightenment, right? The realizations of the stages of the path of the Lamrim, all comes from the mind, you know, not from somewhere else. So it seems to be quite an important thing to take care of the mind, you know, to develop it in stages, and then it's all with us, right? So we don't have to look for anything else. It's just there. We only have to train it. As we know, we have two potentials, right? We have a Buddha potential by nature, right? So that's the potential that is there since beginner's lifetime, meaning our mind is empty of inherent existence. Yeah, so that's there since beginner's lifetime, and also the mind of the Buddha is empty of inherent existence. Yeah, so that aspect, the ultimate nature of the mind of the Buddha and the ultimate nature of the mind of us is exactly the same. Yeah, so that's exactly the same. That's one Buddha potential. Yeah, Buddha potential by nature. So here also in the first verse, it talks about the ultimate nature of the mind, which is this kind of Buddha potential by nature. Yeah. Then the conventional aspect of the mind is the second Buddha potential, and that is the Buddha potential that has to be developed, or that can be developed, you know. So that's kind of what we do in the Lamrim meditations and what we do to train our mind, you know. So that's kind of the Buddha potential that has to be developed. So there's two Buddha potentials. Yeah. So it all comes from the mind itself. Yeah. Okay. So then in verse number 5, it talks about the mind of clear light abandons all conceptions. You know. So initially we need conceptions, right? Initially we need to realize emptiness, we need to think about things, right? All our analytical meditations in the Lamrim are all conceptual, right? But in a constructive way. The destructive emotions, they are also conceptual, but not in a constructive way, because that's why it causes a problem. We think about the person in a very negative way. We build this image of the person very negative, which is not the person. The image we have of the person is not the person, right? It's just mentally created. As we talked about before, this mental image we create of a situation or a person is just by our own thoughts. And then we think that that image is the person or the situation, and it causes a problem, because that's not the case. You know? So in that way, conceptualizations and thinking about the past and the future and worrying about things all the time, you know, those kind of conceptualizations actually only cause disturbance, right? So if you learn yourself to be more in the present and be aware, and observe, then these conceptualizations become less powerful. Yeah, they're not that kind of, they cannot influence you anymore. Yeah, so that's what we talk about here as well. But then eventually we realize emptiness, first conceptual, and then later on it becomes a direct perception. Yeah, those we did the course before on mind and mental factors, that initially there's kind of wrong view, different types of doubt, correct assumption, then inference, right? And then subsequent cognition. And then eventually it becomes a direct perception of emptiness, or yogic direct perception. Yeah. So then the mind of a Buddha is also free of conceptions, right? So that's eventually where we go to. Yeah. Because most of the conceptualities, they actually cause us to get, and stay in samsara. We know only the direct perception of emptiness is going to lead us beyond samsara. Only direct perception of emptiness. If you have a direct perception of emptiness, you don't create new 12 links of samsara anymore, right? So why? Because ignorance, the link of ignorance of the 12 links, is not present if you have a direct perception of emptiness. So that's kind of one aspect. And then the other aspect is, with the power of direct perception of emptiness, you eliminate or abandon, so to say, these kind of afflictions together with the seeds. So that means you don't create new causes for samsara, and you get rid of these afflictions together with the seeds, and that produces liberation or enlightenment based on the motivation of renunciation or bodhicitta. Yeah. So eventually conceptualizations are being eliminated at the level of Buddhahood, right? But for us beginners, we need a conceptualization in a constructive way, by contemplating the Lamrim, for example. Yeah. So that's why it says here, being separated, the separation of conceptualities is, liberation in the sense of the liberation of enlightenment. Yeah, that doesn't have any conceptualities anymore. Yeah. And then in verse number 6, it talks about the importance of bodhicitta, because without bodhicitta, these meditations doesn't really produce the results, So, and also Lobsang Tenzin, I just mentioned, this great meditator, who went to the US for research and then got all these realizations. But when he did retreats, he said that, when he didn't cry out of compassion, he didn't start his practice, because it didn't work. But when his compassion was so strong, if you have compassion and you do Tonglen, for example, and you want to take suffering of others, and then in the end, you see, oh, this is just a visualization. I have to do something more constructive, Then you take bodhisattva vows, or then you take Mahayana precepts, or then you start your Vajrayana practice, then it's really very beneficial. So that's what these meditators say, and they speak from experience, right? That if you really strong compassion and then you do Vajrayana practice, then it goes, then it goes like that. So that's probably why Nagarjuna says in verse number 6, through knowing all these kind of points, you should put effort. If you understand the points we discussed, the nature of the mind, then you should pay homage, right, to the mind, and also the mind of enlightenment, as being your motivation. Because without bodhicitta, then these practices will not produce the result it can bring. The stronger your bodhicitta is, the better your understanding of emptiness is, then these contemplations, they will really produce results. So that's why I have to put a lot. His Holiness always says, no, bodhicitta and emptiness is the two main pillars, so to say, right? Why two main pillars? Because bodhicitta is a method, emptiness is the wisdom, right? And they go together and they enhance each other, because the more you understand emptiness, compassion will increase, right? The more compassion increases and bodhicitta increases. The more bodhicitta increases, the realization of emptiness gets the power or the potential to eliminate obscurations, right? That's kind of, So that's why it says, then with this motivation of bodhicitta, meditate on the Vajra of the mind, as we just discussed, this ultimate nature of the mind, and accomplish what is called supreme enlightenment. Yeah, so yeah, that's what it eventually is, right? That by understanding the ultimate nature of the mind, meditate on it, seeing its ultimate nature, and then eventually Buddhahood will be accomplished. Yeah, yeah. So that's yeah. Then verse number 7 talks about yeah, different aspects of you know, elements, senses, etc. They're actually bound by the body or with the body by the power of karma and afflictions, right? So then when you generate certain practices, especially in the Vajrayana, there's a possibility of making the most subtle mind more manifest. Yeah, so that's Vajrayana has a very uncommon feature in generating very subtle states of mind or consciousness. You know, so you can imagine the subtler the mind becomes, the more the non-duality between mind and emptiness will arise. You know, so if there's more non-duality between mind and emptiness, yeah, then there's a more powerful aspect of eliminating obscurations. So that's the kind of the way the Vajrayana is a very sophisticated part because of that feature, yeah, of generating a very subtle mind by certain meditation techniques, and then that mind you use to focus upon emptiness, and then it goes like a rocket, you know. Yeah. But if you don't know how to fly a rocket, then it can be a disaster. Yeah, so that's why you have to train in the lamrim and then get a good understanding of emptiness, and then motivation of bodhicitta. Then it goes like a rocket. You know, study well the Vajrayana, then it can be a real rocket to enlightenment much faster. As we know, in the sutra system, we talk about 3 countless eons, right? In the sutra system, it takes 3 countless eons. But actually, there's the fastest track. You know that? Bodhisattvas, you know, there are also bodhisattvas who takes 46 countless eons. So it's a bit longer. You know, so if you don't have the strong compassion, then it doesn't make sense. But if you have strong compassion and think, I can't wait for other beings, you know, I can't bear the suffering of others anymore. I need a fast track. Then you have the right kind of motivation or compassion, so to say, to enter the Vajrayana, right? And then it becomes a kind of sophisticated path. Yeah, so that's talks about in verse number 7. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so it's a very precious text. You can explain this text according to the sutra, according to the Vajrayana, according to Dzogchen, Mahamudra, clear-eyed minds. There's many possibilities of explaining it. So today we just give kind of an introduction of a few things. Yeah. So yeah, maybe just read from Tibetan, received from His Holiness once in Dharmasala. Then those who like to take transmission can take. Yeah, this is very precious, very rare. I think His Holiness only taught once, so to say. Yeah. So yeah. Switch to channel.
Okay, we're on the same channel, Geshe.
Okay. Kyagye du ji tabenza tabam böge du semgi doji tu ba jamba jun gyubala ja zelo kangi semjung dabani semni gi ni selze te sengi mumba selwa yi ransem de la ja zelo semjum mumba nazo nam tade lai mikba la rinjen semni namdo le la jen dubde yumayin semni semtoba kaza sen toba ni chanjub de semni dowa ngabo yin dedan dugnel zeni da semle mato junse me dowa kungi tongwa nam junse gomba namba yang de gun semgi dawa run de ni semba temba yin namba toba pangba sem namba toba ngojebe korba namdo tsamni de namdo meba tarba yin Dewa kungi bewa yi janji semla chatsel chatsel semgi dojo gombaji deni janju josheda kamgi semni luki ching Semme kamni dewaju, dechir semni kundusung delek, semle sangye jung, semgi dojitube loban lubogi, zeba zoso. And for the beginning, then think, yeah, next time, also future lifetimes, also to always meet these kind of teachings. Yeah.
Y es que vamos a también a dedicar para que en el futuro podamos seguir recibiendo este tipo de enseñanzas.
Jage de zita benza ta bambuga de sengi doji de bejamba june giwala jazelo kangi sanjindawa semni gini de sengi memba zawa ransam de la chatselo. Yeah, so that's the text. It's a very precious text. Yeah, I always carry, sometimes read a little bit. Yeah, it's only a few verses, but very profound in the sutra system as well as in the Vajrayana systems. So yeah, it's kind of a root text, so to say, of the clear light minds, root text of the Mahamudra Sutra, Vajrayana, as well as Dzogchen and those kind of things. Yeah. So His Holiness also received from, I think, Geshe, one of the great masters of Nyingma. You know, yeah. So yeah, there's many explanations possible. So today we did just a very simple one, so to say. Yeah.
Este es un texto muy valioso, un texto muy precioso. Yo lo suelo llevar por ahí siempre conmigo. Es muy profundo, habla sobre como hemos visto, sobre la naturaleza de la luz clara y se puede explicar desde muchos puntos de vista distintos, desde el punto de vista del sutra, desde el punto de vista del Vajrayana también, ¿no? Y es un texto muy precioso. Como he dicho, habla de la naturaleza de la mente de la luz clara. A veces también se explica desde el punto de vista del Mahamudra, a veces desde el punto de vista de Dzogchen. Y yo creo que su santidad, si no me equivoco, lo recibió también de un Rinpoche, Tosam Rinpoche. Y hay muchas explicaciones, muchas interpretaciones que se pueden hacer de este texto.
Yeah. So yeah, we still have a few minutes. I mean, only a few, but yeah, if there's any questions, then we can still have a few minutes. Yeah.
Quedan unos pocos minutos, unos pocos, pero si hay algunas preguntas, podemos contestarlas. Así que voy a empezar con una pregunta que quedó de la última clase, que es la diferencia entre vacuidad y visión superior. Geshe, from the previous class, there was a question about the difference between emptiness and special insight.
Yeah. So
yeah,
what was the question?
What's the difference between emptiness and special insight?
Emptiness and special insight.
Yeah.
Emptiness is the object and special insight is the mind realizing it, right? So there's many levels of special insight. You can have a special insight of realizing subtle impermanence. You can have a special insight of realizing emptiness, right? So the object, emptiness means things are empty of inherent existence, right? Like our body is empty of inherent existence because it's momentary changing. Yeah. Our mind is empty of inherent existence because it's momentary changing, right? So that seeing that your body and your mind are not that solid as they appear, and they empty of inherent existence, yeah, the emptiness of that is the object emptiness that has been examined with a mind that analyzes, you know, with calm abiding, yeah, because with special insight means that a person has calm abiding, and then special insight comes. Yeah, so special insight is a mind that is capable of analyzing without losing the concentration. Yeah, so that's the meaning of special insight, so to say. Yeah.
Pues la vacuidad es el objeto y la visión superior es la mente que analiza ese objeto. Entonces, en realidad la visión superior puede tener distintos objetos en los cuales analiza, ¿no? Puede ser, por ejemplo, la impermanencia sutil, o puede ser, por ejemplo, la vacuidad, ¿no? Cuando hablamos de vacuidad estamos hablando de esa ausencia de entidad inherente de un objeto. Por ejemplo, mi cuerpo carece de una naturaleza inherente porque está cambiando momento a momento, o mi mente carece de una naturaleza inherente porque está cambiando momento a momento. Entonces, esa ausencia de entidad inherente es lo que llamamos vacuidad. Luego, la mente que comprende eso, que analiza eso, es la visión superior. Obviamente, si es visión superior, necesariamente está dotada de la calma mental. porque la visión superior es una mente que tiene esta capacidad de analizar sin distraerse, sin perder la concentración.
Yeah, so emptiness is the object that has to be realized in order to eliminate ignorance, and the mind that eventually realizes is this special insight, right? A very powerful mind, 100% concentrated and then analyzing and then realizing this emptiness. Yeah.
Por tanto, la vacuidad es este objeto que tiene la capacidad de eliminar la ignorancia, y la visión superior es esa mente, una mente muy poderosa que es la que tiene la capacidad de comprender esa vacuidad que está 100% concentrada.
Yeah.
Vale, vamos a pasar a... There's again a few questions.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Vamos a pasar a la siguiente pregunta de José, que dice: al hacer el ofrecimiento del mandala, intento sentir que las 3 esferas son vacías y tienen la misma naturaleza. Y al hacer esto tengo la sensación que el ofrecimiento pierde su valor. ¿Es esto correcto? So there's a question from a person who says, when I try to do the mandala offering, I try to see the 3 spheres as empty of inherent existence and in the same nature as emptiness. And when I do that, I feel that the offering, what I'm offering, loses its value. Is that correct?
So the mandala also disappears, is it?
Así que el mandala también desaparece, ¿no?
I mean, on a conventional level, you visualize the mandala according to the description, right? Although the universe doesn't exist in the way as been described, because one interpretation karmically we cannot see it in that way, right? But it has many symbolic meanings of the different, you know, like the horse and the elephant and the king and the, you know, the different aspects, the queen and you know, the how do you call that person in charge of the army, you know? So they actually symbolize these aspects. When you actually offer a whole universe, so you create incredible amount of merit. Yeah, and then you imagine that there's not just one sitting there, but you multiply yourself in countless forms and offer countless mandalas. And each atom of the mandala you can visualize yourself offering. Yeah, so like the offerings like Samatha Vajra kind of style of offerings. So that's a conventional thing we have to mainly focus upon, right? And then we try to see that the mandala yourself and the act of offering by itself, or the object to which you offer, is empty of inherent existence, right? So that doesn't mean nothing is there, because you can feel, right? The mandala is there, you're holding it. What is empty of inherent existence is there is no inherent mandala, there's no inherent you, and there's no inherent Buddha. Yeah, because there is a Buddha on the conventional level, there's you on the conventional level, and there's mandala on the conventional level. You can feel, right? Especially if you do many mandalas, you sometimes even, you know, you break your skin or something like that, right? So you feel there is for sure mandala there, you know. But what we try to see is not that concrete existing from its own size. To cut that aspect, we think, oh, it's empty of inherent existence. Yeah, so that's, yeah. So you have to think about there's a conventional reality and an ultimate reality. Yeah, so you try to build a bridge between the two, in the sense there is a mandala, you visualize the best way you can according to the description, and you think in the back of your mind, oh, it doesn't exist from its own side, right? It doesn't exist that concrete, because it depends on me making it, it depends on me holding it, right? So that's how you try to contemplate your actions as being empty of inherent existence. Yeah, but on conventional level, there's a reality there, right? Yeah.
En realidad es que hay 2 aspectos cuando estamos haciendo un ofrecimiento de mandala, ¿no? Primero tenemos un aspecto convencional donde en realidad tenemos que tratar de visualizar el mandala tal como se explica, ¿no? Se explica que tenemos que visualizar el mandala como si fuese este universo, que aunque en verdad convencionalmente este universo no existe tal como se indica en la descripción, tiene mucho significado simbólico, ¿no? Por ejemplo, cuando visualizamos el caballo o el elefante, el rey, la reina, el general, etcétera, ¿no? Cada aspecto visualizado tiene un aspecto muy simbólico, ¿no? Entonces, al ofrecer todo un universo, esto nos hace generar muchísimo mérito. Y no solamente nos visualizamos como una sola persona haciendo un ofrecimiento de mandalas, sino que nos visualizamos como si fuésemos infinitas personas haciendo este ofrecimiento de mandala al estilo de Samantha VAJRA, ¿verdad? Entonces, visualizamos este mandala. Este es el aspecto convencional, pero luego obviamente también tenemos el otro aspecto donde visualizamos tanto el mandala como a la persona que ofrece el mandala y al objeto de ofrecimiento o el mandala en sí mismo como vacío de existencia inherente, ¿no? Vacío de existencia inherente. Ahora, esto no quiere decir cuando visualizamos estas tres esferas vacías de existencia inherente que no existan, ¿no? A veces nos confundimos, no quieren decir que no existan. Quieren decir que están vacías de esta realidad tan sólida, tan concreta, pero en realidad sí que existen porque tú existes, el mandala existe, el Buda existe, el ofrecimiento existe, por lo tanto sí que existe, pero lo que no existe es inherentemente a un nivel convencional. Sí que existe porque de hecho cuando estás haciendo muchos mandalas, si haces muchos mandalas, te acabas raspando incluso y te haces daño en la piel. Por lo tanto, claro que existe, pero pero cuando estás observando, tratas de ver que eso que estás ofreciendo y las tres esferas no existen de una forma tan sólida, tan concreta como aparece a la mente, porque está vacío de naturaleza inherente. Entonces, en realidad, lo que tratamos de hacer es como un puente entre la realidad convencional y la realidad última. Por un lado, visualizamos este mandala de forma convencional, pero también vemos que ese mandala carece de una existencia por sí misma, de existir por sí mismo, de una naturaleza inherente. ¿Por qué? Porque tú has creado el mandala, estás sosteniendo el mandala, estás poniendo la mano, por lo tanto no existe por sí mismo, pero sí que existe. Entonces creas este puente entre estas dos realidades y eso es lo que tratamos de hacer.
So in a similar way, this cup, you see, this cup, there's a cup there, there's a shape and there's a color. There's a conventional cup, right? But this cup also has a quality of being momentary changing, right? That's also quality of the cup. The cup also has a quality of being empty of inherent existence. Yeah, so we perceive color and shape, and still the cup is empty of inherent existence at the same time, right? So your mandala is very similar, right? It's kind of, there's all the individual whatever grains or jewels you have is there, the base, etc. Yeah, and there's a shape is there, and there's a color. There's a reality, right? There's a conventional reality. The mandala set is also momentary changing, as we know, right? And the mandala set is also empty of inherent existence. Yeah, so there's two levels of the mandala set: a conventional reality of the shape and the color, for example, and an ultimate aspect of being empty of inherent existence, right? So, but both of those natures or those reality exist with the mandala itself, so that's there should not be any contradiction. Yeah.
Por ejemplo, en el caso de esta taza, ¿no? Como hemos visto ahora mismo la taza. Esta taza, la que ha enseñado Geshe, tiene una forma y tiene un color. Tiene esas cualidades de color y de forma. Pero a su vez tiene otras cualidades, por ejemplo, la impermanencia, el cambio instante a instante, es una de las cualidades de la taza. Otra cualidad de la taza, por ejemplo, es la ausencia de esta existencia inherente. Eso también es una cualidad de la taza. Entonces la taza tiene varias cualidades, unas que percibimos y quizás otras que no. Pero el mandala es algo similar. Con el mandala es algo similar. Por ejemplo, tenemos este mandala que quizás está formado por distintos granos o distintos tipos de joyas, ¿no? Tiene sus formas, tiene sus colores, pero a su vez también tiene la cualidad de estar cambiando instante a instante. Tiene la cualidad de estar vacía de esta existencia inherente. O sea que en el mandala se unen dos tipos de realidad. Se unen la realidad convencional, con su que vamos a decir que es su color y su forma, pero también tiene su realidad última, que es la ausencia de identidad inherente, su vacuidad. Entonces, todas estas dos realidades coexisten en el mandala y no debería de haber ningún tipo de contradicción.
Yeah.
Una pregunta de Bea. Las causas son las semillas kármicas y las condiciones el resultado de estas huellas. So are the causes the karmic seeds and the conditions the results of the imprints?
The karmic courses.
Are the causes the karmic seeds? So the karmic seeds, are they the causes? Because I think we talk about causes and conditions.
Yeah.
So are the causes karmic seeds and conditions the results of the imprints? I'm not sure. I think she said it in the context of a teaching, but I don't know in which context it is. Bea, quizás si nos dan más detalles sobre... Puedes abrir el micro también si quieres. Porque no sé en qué contexto es la pregunta.
I mean,
Es en el contexto. Sorry.
¿Sí? Di, Bea, te escuchamos.
Ok. Sí, es en el contexto de que dependemos de causas y de condiciones. Bueno, tanto el yo como los fenómenos. Entonces, la duda es si las causas son las que están dentro de las semillas kármicas y los resultados las condiciones son los resultados de esas semillas kármicas.
Okay, so it seems, okay, so the question is like that, literally like that. So the karmic seeds are the causes and are the conditions, the results of those karmic imprints.
The cause and conditions result of the karmic imprints.
No, just the causes. So she divides causes and conditions in two.
Yeah, so that's basically, we always have causes and conditions, right? Yeah, so that means when we experience suffering or happiness, there's a lot of things going on, right? One aspect is that it's caused by karma and afflictions, and conditions can be internal or external. You think in a particular way, or somebody says something to you, right? So it's a very complex system of karmic imprints that creates a particular cause to get unhappy, and an external factor of somebody who would say something to you, right? So there's always a lot of causes and conditions involved. But among the cause and conditions, it's mainly the cause, and the conditions are just, how to say, corporate conditions. So the main cause is created by karma, because, you know, some people, you can argue them as long as you like, but they don't get angry, right? Because inside, the cause to get angry is not present. Yeah, and the condition of arguing doesn't disturb their mind. For us, untrained minds, we have the cause of karma getting angry again and again in previous states, and then the person argues you, and then that triggers this cause inside your continuum, and you get angry, right? So yeah, that's a kind of a process that causes are related with karma and conditions indirectly related, but they can also come from outside. Yeah, nothing is without dependence, right? To meet a person who is not nice to you also depends on a karmic connection, although that person is a kind of condition for this to happen, but indirectly it's also related, right? Yeah, but the main cause is true, comes from a karmic aspect or imprint. Yeah.
En realidad es complejo, ¿no? Por ejemplo, cuando tenemos experiencias de felicidad o de sufrimiento, es un sistema muy complejo que es el resultado de muchas causas y condiciones distintas que se reúnen en un momento dado. Por ejemplo, la causa principal de cualquier tipo de experiencia, ya sea una experiencia de felicidad o una experiencia de sufrimiento, va a ser el karma y las aflicciones, ¿no? Pero luego tenemos también las condiciones que pueden ser tanto internas como externas. Por ejemplo, internas puede ser algo que he pensado, externas pueden ser algo que me han dicho, ¿no? Entonces es un sistema muy complejo el que se está dando cuando surge cualquier tipo de situación. Pero principalmente lo que provoca la situación son las causas, ¿no? Y esas causas están determinadas principalmente por el karma. Y luego tenemos las condiciones vamos a decir que son cooperantes, ¿no? Son las que cooperan para que esas causas puedan madurar, pero principalmente hablamos del karma, de las causas que son el karma. Entonces, vemos, por ejemplo, cuando hay personas que por mucho que discutan con ellas o le digan cosas, no se enfadan, ¿no? Aunque las condiciones están ahí. ¿Por qué no se enfadan? Porque la causa principal, que es el karma, de enfadarse, esa semilla de enfado, no está presente en sus mentes. Entonces, por mucho que tratemos de discutir con esa persona y hacer enfadar a esa persona no se enfada. Mientras que para nosotras y nosotros, con personas con mentes que no están entrenadas, nos dicen algo y enseguida nos enfadamos, ¿no? Ese enfado viene principalmente porque tenemos la causa, esa semilla del enfado, que es el karma, ¿no? Debido a muchos enfados previos, entonces surge el enfado y la condición en este caso sigue una persona que nos está diciendo algo. Obviamente también esas condiciones están relacionadas con el karma, pueden estar relacionadas con el karma, porque para que haya una persona que venga a hablarte mal o a insultarte, tiene que haber alguna conexión kármica, pero pueden ser tanto externa como interna.
Yeah, is that a bit clear?
¿Está claro? ¿Queda claro? It seems to be, Geshe. Thank you. There is one more question. Una pregunta de Mercedes que dice: cuando creamos una imagen negativa de una persona por comportamiento del pasado, ¿cómo liberarnos de ella si la persona, por ejemplo, parece que a lo largo del tiempo mantiene una conducta similar? ¿Cómo hacer para no congelar a una persona por su pasado? So this question says, when we create a negative mental image of a person based on some past behavior of the person, and that person seems not to have changed too much from the mental image that you've created, how do you free yourself, or how do you do in order not to freeze the person in that past mental image?
Yeah, kick it out.
Dale una patada, sácala fuera.
I mean, these mental images, the first step is to see that the mental image itself is mentally created, right? So if you see it's mentally created, you see it's your own creation. If you see it is your own creation, it helps you to understand this is not the person. This image I have of this person is not the actual person. Yeah, so that has to be contemplated quite a bit by analyzing that mental image. The more you've contemplated that, then you actually teach yourself not to believe this mental image, because often we think, oh, this is the person is like this. Yeah, so the more you see that it's just a play of the mind, this kind of conceptualization is just a play of the mind, then if you see it's just a play, you can take a distance. If you can take a distance, you can analyze it and you can see, oh, it's just mentally fabricated, it's not reality, right? And then you can kick it out, so to say, or you don't get influenced by it. Yeah.
Pues en primer lugar, antes cuando he dicho darle una patada, nos referíamos a la imagen mental, no a la persona. Cuando nos creamos, lo primero para poder deshacer esta imagen mental es darse cuenta que la imagen que nos hemos creado de la persona es una creación mental. Y cuando nos damos cuenta que es una creación mental, nos damos cuenta que esa imagen no es la persona. Esto hay que contemplarlo bastante, analizarlo y contemplarlo bastante. Y cuanto más lo contemplemos, menos nos creeremos que esa imagen autocreada de la persona es la persona en sí misma, ¿no? Porque solemos pensar, es que esta persona es así o es asado, ¿no? Entonces, cuanto más nos demos cuenta de este teatro mental que se está produciendo en nuestra mente, más distancia podremos tomar. Cuanto más distancia podamos tomar, más podremos entonces analizar y darnos cuenta que es una imagen mental.
Yeah. So are we able to kick it out or not?
¿Sí? ¿Eres capaz de darle una patada, de echarlo de tu mente o no? So.
Yeah, so, yeah. Okay, good start, no? Yeah. try to, I mean, it's just gain experience, right? So often we have an idea, or this person says this, probably because of that, or probably because of that. If we have this, we create this kind of reality, and later on we found out, oh, that's not true. When you meet a person, you talk with a person, you see it's not the case, right? So from those examples, you can learn so much. Or you meet a stranger, and then you look from this and think, oh, this person, maybe it's like this, maybe it's like that. Then you talk with a person, and it's completely different than your expectation, right? So you can learn a lot from these kind of events in life, yeah?
Claro, bueno, es un buen comienzo. En realidad hace falta ir generando como experiencia, ¿no? En este ámbito. Porque, por ejemplo, muchas veces tenemos una situación en la vida y pensamos, ay, seguramente es que esta persona es así, o es que esta persona me ha dicho esto, me hará esto. Y luego te das cuenta, pues, a lo largo del tiempo, de que en realidad no pasó como tú te habías imaginado. Te das cuenta de que no era real, de que no era cierto, ¿no? Este tipo de ejemplos nos ayuda mucho a desmontar este tipo de imágenes mentales que nos creamos, ¿no? Cuando tú te creas la imagen de que una persona es de una manera determinada y luego hablas con ella y te das cuenta de que es muy distinta como tú te habías imaginado a la persona. Este ejemplo nos ayuda. O cuando ves a una persona desconocida por la calle y te la imaginas de una forma en particular, será así o será de esta otra forma, ¿no? Y luego tienes una conversación con ella y te das cuenta de que esa persona no tiene nada que ver con cómo te la habías imaginado. Y ese tipo de ejemplos nos ayuda a darnos cuenta de que estas imágenes mentales que nos creamos son falsas.
Yeah, so that's a homework.
Esos son vuestros deberes.
All right, that's it. Any questions? That's it.
That's it, Geshe. That was the final question.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, Conchi and Fernando for making it all happen, and all people involved from Nagarjuna Madrid. I enjoyed it a lot. I always say, being with the Spanish is kind of, because I'm very relaxed, Spanish people very relaxed. So I feel very at home with Spanish people. So thank you very much. And also for Anna, of course, for translation. That's the most difficult part. I know for me, talking is easy, but translation is more complicated. So yeah, also thanks Anna very much for accurate and very good translation. Yeah, so you have to translate that, right? Yeah. Yeah, don't forget.
Muchas gracias. Primero de todo, quiero dar las gracias a Conchi y a Fernando y a todo el equipo de Nagarjuna Madrid que ha hecho posible estas enseñanzas. Yo me suelo sentir muy en casa con los españoles porque yo me siento muy relajado y los españoles sois también muy relajados. Entonces siempre me siento muy en casa cuando estoy con ustedes. Y también le quiero dar las gracias a Ana por la traducción. Es la parte más difícil. Para mí hablar es muy fácil. Así que muchas gracias a ella por traducir de una forma tan eficaz. Y bueno, ahora tienes que traducir eso también.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then, yeah, we have some plans for next year. So let's see how that goes. And then we probably meet again somewhere.
Muchas gracias, Geshe, por su bondad, por darnos sus enseñanzas y por su amabilidad. No puedo decir nada más. Lo único que me gustaría mucho hacer un ofrecimiento. Cuando venga por aquí quiero hacerle una paella, a ver si le gusta y queda contento.
Y traerlo al sur para que vea los árboles y los frondosos.
Eso luego.
También. So, primero Geshe antes había dicho que bueno, que muchas gracias a todo el mundo y que ya tenemos planes, quizás tenemos planes. ¿Hay un micro abierto? Ahí. Y que quizás tenemos planes para el año que viene, así que ya hablaremos de eso. And then Fernando said, Geshe, I want to thank you for your kindness and your teachings. They were very, very precious. So I want to thank you for that kindness, and that I'd love to make an offering to you, a paella offering to you next time you come to Spain. And I said that I'd love to make you an offering to bring you to southern Spain and show you how many trees and how many rivers and how many mountains we have.
Good. Yeah. I will come and count all the trees in South Spain, okay?
Yes, I'll bring you to them.
Yeah. All right, then. Yeah. So thank you very much, and then probably see you somewhere next year, and then please don't die, and then we meet again. Yeah.
Pues muchas gracias a todo el mundo. Nos veremos seguramente el año que viene. Por favor, no os muráis y nos vemos el año que viene.
Yeah, so then maybe we do the few dedications. Yeah, maybe just 2 bodhicittas. Everybody knows, right? To dedicate all the contemplations and interests. Amazing. We've accumulated over the last few Thursdays, and then dedicate for the purpose of long life of precious gurus, His Holiness Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and all teachers, please, true path to enlightenment, as well as the spreading of the Buddha Dharma in the different centers within the organization, in particular those in Spain, particular Nagarjuna Madrid, be of the greatest benefits, obstacles be removed, and all the people involved quickly achieve a state of realizations. Yeah. And all the people passed away quickly find precious rebirth, go to Pure Lands, achieve enlightenment very quickly, and obstacles for all beings, sickness, everything be pacified. Yeah, so take that into account, all those points. Then we recite the 2 verses of generating bodhicitta and realizing emptiness in the minds of all sentient beings. Yeah.
Pues antes de terminar vamos a realizar la dedicación, vamos a dedicar con estas 2 estrofas de las 2 bodhicittas, vamos a contemplar y vamos a pensar para poder generar estas 2 bodhicittas, todo el mérito que hemos generado en base a todas las contemplaciones, reflexiones que hemos hecho, todo este increíble interés que tenéis en las enseñanzas. Vamos a dedicar el mérito también que se genera a través de eso. Vamos a dedicar el mérito para la larga vida de nuestros gurús, su santidad el Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, para que tengan muy largas vidas y que nos acompañen hasta la iluminación. También para que el Buda Dharma se esparza por todo el mundo, por todos los centros budistas, especialmente ahora en España y especialmente en el centro Nagarjuna Madrid, para que cualquier obstáculo que pueda haber se disipe, para que todas las personas involucradas puedan generar realizaciones en sus mentes, para que cualquier persona que haya fallecido recientemente pueda obtener un precioso renacimiento humano, renacer en una tierra pura y lograr la iluminación, o para que cualquier persona que esté enferma pueda liberarse de esas enfermedades y esos obstáculos y que podamos generar las 2 bodhicittas en nuestra mente.
Janjo Semjo Rinpoche Magye Pana Gyegyu Chik Gyeba Nyamba Meba Yang Gone Gone Belwa Sho Toni Tawa Rinpoche Magye Pana Gyegyu Chik Gyeba Nyamba Meba Yang Gone Gone Belwa Sho. Okay, gracias, and yeah, buenas noches, and then see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Geshe.
Bye, thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye-bye. Gracias.
Thank you very much.